Hello, chart watchers and Decision Point faithful. Welcome to this Monday, November 23rd, 2020 Decision Point show with your hosts, Erin Swenlin, myself, and my father, Carl Swenlin. We are here to help prepare you for the week ahead. Of course, this being a holiday week, there's probably not going to be too much going on, but we do have a lot of very interesting charts to talk about. How's it going up there, Dad?
Pretty good.
All right. Yeah, it's a little chilly. Not too bad here in Southern
Actually,
California.
our heater went out. Our heating went out yesterday. So,
Oh my goodness.
yeah, so we're really struggling under these 66-degree temperatures here.
I know. Well, fortunately, I have a fire.
Exactly.
And I don't know, Mom tends to run a little bit on the warm side, so she's probably doing all right.
Not too bad.
All right, well, let's take a peek at our agenda. Of course, I'm going to go over the diamond of the week, but that's going to be at the end of the program. We're going to look at the Dow versus the S&P 500. Some interesting analysis there for you from Carl. Climax analysis review. We'll also talk about that. The energy sector is hot. We had a subscriber write in about asking us when we might hit the 3,000 level for the SPY. Well, that's a pretty loaded question. So we'll talk a little bit about that back and forth and our thoughts about hitting the 3,000 level for the S&P 500. And then, like I said, the energy sector is still quite hot. A lot going on over there. We will look at that sector chart and check under the hood at all of our indicators, in particular, the Silver Cross Index and the Golden Cross Index, which is hours alone here at Decision Point. All right, so let's go ahead and get started. I do want to remind everybody, I do a live trading room for free on Monday at noon Eastern time, 9 a.m. of course, Pacific time. All you have to do is sign up for our free email list, and then you can register for the trading room. It's recurring. So once you register once, it's the same room. It should be very easy for you to get in there. And I do send out the recordings later on in the day. So something to look forward to there. All right, so our Decision Point scoreboard is really not much to say here. We're all of these are on buy signals. We did not get any signal changes last week. And the only sell signal that is remaining is the long-term PMO signal. And this is derived from our monthly chart, and it's the monthly PMO. And currently, the monthly PMO, while it is rising, it still hasn't had a positive crossover. So that's why we still have that December 31st, almost 1 year old long-term sell signal for the Dow Industrials. As far as the sector scoreboard, again, somewhat boring with all the green. Of course, we aren't too bored when things are going the right way. The only sell signal left is actually on the energy sector. It is our long-term trend model, and this signal will only change until we get a golden cross or a 50 moving above the 200-day EMA. So we're still waiting on that, but you'll get to see that chart more closely later in the program when we start talking about the energy sector. All right, so let's go ahead and look at some charts. I'm actually going to pass it over to you, Dad, to get started, because I know you wanted to talk a bit about the Dow versus the S&P 500 and what we're seeing on those charts.
Right. I always am curious when I see a day like today. The Dow was up 1.12%, and the S&P was up 0.56%, so about half of what the Dow did. And so here's the list of the Dow 30 stocks. And Chevron was the leader, but on a weighted basis, Boeing had the most effect on the Dow today in terms of the upside. And that's where we're getting the that difference between the Dow and the S&P. That's one area. As far as on the bottom is Apple, almost minus 3% today, and that is not as weighted as much in the S&P 5. In the Dow, because the price is so low. But in the S&P 500, it's heavily weighted. So not only did Boeing not help the S&P as much as it did the Dow, but Apple pulled the S&P down much more than the Dow. And just make sure and make that clear. Even though Chevron was the leader today, it's at less than half the price of Boeing, and Boeing is and the Dow is a price weighted index. Let's just take a look at. There's Boeing, and you see if you get the airline index out, it's going to look just like this. So wait, I don't know why Boeing is in the airline index, but I assume that it is because it's so heavily, it's such a large cap stock and it weighs heavily on the indexes.
Mm-hmm.
Okay, now I need to get another. Let's see, today energy was big time up and basically was the leader for the market today.
Absolutely. Certainly been on fire.
And let's look at that energy chart. It's running into a resistance here, and I'm not sure where. No, I'm not sure what that is. Oh, I know, it's drawing across this top. So it's coming up against resistance from this top over here, and getting overbought in most of the areas. Bullish percent is still got some room to go to the upside, and if it's persistent, it can stay in the top or the bottom for quite a long time. This is these indexes, the range is finite, so once it gets to 100, it can't go any higher. But what I wanted to point out here, this is, check a look at this crossover. This is the trend model, intermediate term trend model, crossover, buy signal. And we had a lot of crossovers around in here. This is one I wanted to mention because it's an example of how you've got a good looking, reliable signal. We always say when we get the signal, it's a notification, it's an information alert. Whereas you need to look at the chart to see if the signal's really any good. And this has looked good since back here, actually, before the crossover, we had sort of a double bottom here. So.
Yeah, I mean, now we're at least above that 200-day EMA. I know that's been
right.
An area to look at, especially when you look at that June top. So at this point, the differences in what's going on with the indicators, I mean, look at the PMO, it was extraordinarily overbought back then in June, and it was starting to turn over. In this case, we just got that signal for the trend model, the silver cross, and we still have a PMO that's not entirely overbought, but it's still pointing in the right direction. It doesn't look like it's hesitating at this point. So I think it's a better setup than what we saw back in June.
Right, for an index, this is pretty high reading on the PMO. Normally an index is about 2.5 plus and 2.5 minus, but I still think, let me just look at the range. Let me just do, say, 5 years and see what we got.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, this is a great trick if you're wondering what the PMO's normal range is. Just take a daily chart and do like Dad's doing there, and 5 years, that usually will give you a good idea.
Yeah, so it's really in the top of the 5-year range there.
So it's something to consider for sure. And then that RSI being so overbought, which is always a concern.
And I was going to do a quick review on the Climax indicators, Climax analysis that we do on a daily basis, and just why it's so important to watch right here. Excuse me. Here we had an upside exhaustion climax. We know that because it was in a rising trend and have got this climax. So at that point, you assume it's an exhaustion rather than an initiation because it's at the end of that trend. Even though we don't know what it's going to do after that, it's a good guess. And we could see we had very high readings on volume and net advanced declines, net advanced decline volume. Over here, this was especially attention getting to me, although if they had it closed on a high on that bar, maybe people would have been sucked in a little more but it was definitely a blow off. And here I have very high readings on the net advanced decline volume, and the total volume was huge for that day. So that's a good sign of a blow off. And look at what has followed since that. It's been sideways. And I want to pull this in a little closer. Much cleaner view. We have there's the blow off, and then here again we have I need to inspect. Okay, and here we had an upside exhaustion. An upside initiation climax on this day, followed the next day by an exhaustion climax, and it's as I say, it once you get a bead on what kind of a climax it is, then you have an idea of what might follow. It's not an exact predictor, but it really gives you a better handle on what's going to happen than, say, like at this blow off or this upside exhaustion climax here. People were jumping in on that day. I can tell you, a lot of people were jumping in on that day, but they were faked out for sure.
Yep. And for those of you interested, maybe this is a little difficult to follow, but we cover this chart, we cover climaxes every single day in the DecisionPoint alerts. You really don't have to decipher these charts so much if you are a member of our website. So highly recommend, if you want to learn more about how we read climax movements on these charts, you'll get an excellent education just reading the DecisionPoint alert.
Okay, and with that, I will turn it back over to you.
Ooh, okay. Let's see. What are we going to look at? Now, I was going to look at that energy chart. Hang on just a second.
And put it back up.
Yeah, go ahead. But I think we pretty much talked through that. Let me just check what we're, okay. I thought we could look at the question from our subscriber who basically said, look, the S&P is extraordinarily overbought. We have highly bullish sentiment. I had done a free article on the Rydex ratio, and it's extraordinarily overbought. So his question is, well, what the heck? When are we going to hit 3,000? I mean, what's going on here? And yeah, you have, let's see which chart we've got up here. Okay, so what I'm gonna do, and please talk to it, because actually the question was addressed to you, Dad, not me. All right, so let's see, I'm gonna come right in here. And I'm gonna pull up our monthly chart. I think that since we're talking about Dow 3000, oh wait, hang on. These are the SPY. Let me get to my other one. And there we go. Okay. So the question is, of course, when might we start getting down to that 3,000 level? Well, looking at it on the monthly chart, it's really not giving me enough of a hint personally as to whether, to expect, that would be maybe the support level. Honestly, I mean, if we did drop, I would be looking for more of a drop. But yeah, you can see. So this level would be just under 3,000. That's really, for me, the next level of some serious support. Obviously, 3,200 as well. But how are we supposed to, the question is, when is it going to happen? Dad, I think you will agree with me that if our timing was that good,
Yeah. Yeah,
I
who
don't think
knows? But what we have to look at is the context. And if you let me have I need an S&P chart
Okay.
because we're talking about the level 3,000.
Okay. Get back here. This is just a simplified S&P chart that I have.
Okay.
I mean,
yeah, we're get the S&P 500 weekly chart.
oh, got it right here.
Okay. We got the megaphone formation to worry about. One thing.
Yes.
That's a bearish formation. So the context is we're really overbought here, and it's a long-term bearish formation, although it's certainly has been going up since early in this year. But go to
Just pointing out that megaphone.
right, and the next thing, go to the stocks above their EMAs.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, that one. Okay, so now we have most recent tops. We're overbought, based on the historical range, and you notice the price is topping out. So we're in a situation where it could be going down. I don't know how far it's going to go, or how long it will go down. So we've got a overbought top here, and it should correct some. It could go like it did there in February, March of this year. Could do something like that.
Let's hope not.
No. But anyway, the context is it's vulnerable now for a decline, and that's the best that I can do.
Yeah, I'm going to show one other chart. I think we'll let me put the thumbnail on this for our viewers. This is our intermediate term indicator chart. And this again is one that I go over every day in the daily DP alert, and Carl looks at it on Fridays with me. And again, this is just an example of some of the indicator charts we have, but there are a lot of these negative divergences in play right now. And typically, when you have those negative divergences, they end poorly. So we have to be aware that those have set up, and that's a concern. So if we were to start, looking at these divergences and an execution, like I said, for me, more that 3,200 level, in this case, the SPY, the 320 level would be a pretty healthy correction. I don't know that we're going to necessarily have to go much further than that. But, if we start to lose it very quickly, then we could see a similar situation where people start to panic. So we have to be aware of that as well. But we are certainly vulnerable for a downturn right now. Absolutely. So when that will happen, that's, as we say, that's kind of anybody's best guess there. But he mentioned the Rydex ratio, so I'm going to pull that chart up as well. If I can remember where I hit it. Should be in my sentiment indicators. Where are my sentiment indicators? There they are. Okay, so I talked about this with my subscribers, I think, last week. And this is a pretty interesting chart. And he talked about the Rydex ratio being very overbought, and it is. I've marked some cardinal tops here. And typically when the Rydex ratio starts to get very overbought, that's a signal that you've got that bullish, too much bullish sentiment. And the way we measure it is we look at how much is in bear funds and how much is going into the bull funds and money markets. So at this point, you can see that we got to a point where all the money was going into those bull funds and nothing was going into the bear funds for quite some time. That brought our ratio very high into that overbought place. And that, of course, you know, we saw what happened after that. Very similar on this shorter decline. You can see the similarities over here. You can see the similarities over here. And now we're at a reading that honestly, we have not seen in, how long is this chart? 2 years. This reading is now higher than we've ever seen it in 2 years. So you can let that sink in. Another sign pointing to too much bullish sentiment and the vulnerability of a decline right now. So, you know, we all often get pegged as being perma-bears, or, you know, really going toward that bearish angle. And what I tell everybody is I think we're more devil's advocates in that we've been in a bull market situation for years, except for back when we just had this bear market. And by playing devil's advocate, being the one to tell you, okay, this looks good, but, you know, we're always pointing out the problems. And, you know, similarly, we got down here. Now you're playing devil's advocate. Okay, what's bullish? How am I going to get in here? So in this case, we are playing devil's advocate, but I think the indicators and the data is there that there's some serious issues as far as overbought and negative divergences. All right, I was going to talk. So we were talking about the energy sector, and I have to say, this is a little different now. When you look at, excuse me, let me go to our sector summary. And you click on energy, it shows you all of the industry groups in the energy sector. Well, StockCharts has moved the renewable energy space out of energy because it was skewing things in their mind. And so you no longer will find the renewable energy over here. I'm a big fan of renewable energy. So the question is, well, where is it now? It has been moved into technology right here. And you can see even in the technology sector, it still has the highest StockCharts technical rank. This is a really strong industry group in the market right now. And my diamond of the week is going to come from this group. So I'm going to just take a quick peek here at the chart. This is for the Dow Jones U.S. Renewable Energy Equipment Index. And you can see that it had been in a very volatile, you know, I wouldn't say trading range, but certainly it was very volatile and really not gaining any ground. Came back and tested the 50-day EMA and then managed to come back up. This time it came down, tested the 20-day EMA. So we already know that, you know, this rising trend is looking pretty good here. Today, obviously, huge breakout. In preparing for the show, I thought, okay, well, hopefully it doesn't appear that I'm throwing out some very overbought stocks or things that you might want to look at in the renewable energy space. And I don't think so. You are probably going to see a pullback here. Just typically when you get a big move to this upside, more than likely you're going to find a pullback the next day toward that breakout point. You don't necessarily get all the way back there, but typically you're going to see maybe some profit taking and you'll get a little bit of a pullback. That's when you start looking for your entries. Let's see. So this is, like I said, the Dow Jones U.S. Renewable Energy Equipment. The other one that I full disclosure, and I do own, is the Solar Energy ETF. And I really like the way this one is shaping up. I will say, yes, it is getting overbought when you look at that RSI, but it is a very strong area. And if you go and look at its personality, as I like to call it, when we've seen these overbought conditions, you can go back and just using your little inspect tool, you can see, you know, what happens. What's the typical pullback off of overbought? So in this case, it was like 14%. Back here, it was about 16, 17%. So you know that you're getting very overbought. So you are at least exposing yourself to that risk of getting that downturn. But right now, the solar ETF, I think, is looking pretty good. You know, you have a PMO that buy signal coming in. You can see while the OBV rising bottoms aren't particularly confirming at this point, I do like the way this PMO is shaping up and turning up in near-term oversold territory. You can see here. But my
you've got a declining tops on the OBV, which
right.
is not incredibly
Yeah, you don't want to see that certainly coming up here. So I don't know. The question is, has that played out with that big decline? And now we're starting to turn back up. It's certainly something to consider, especially when we're looking at a very overbought situation. But here's the one that I have as the diamond of the week, and that would be Sunrun. It is in the renewable energy space, but I think this one looks a lot better as far as not being too overbought. And you have the beautiful PMO buy signal coming in just at that zero line. We now have a positive PMO. You know, the scooter has been, the StockCharts technical rank has been excellent, even through this very difficult pullback that Sunrun had, which was very difficult. I own this stock. So, but we're now starting to get that move back up to the upside. You have a double bottom. Today, actually Friday, it had already penetrated that line, that confirmation line, but today we actually got the close above it and a nice run, I think, to the upside. The RSI is not overbought. So, you know, this one is a really nice setup. And again, though, it is in that renewable energy space. It can be very volatile and you need to be prepared for that. So, but this one I think looks great as my diamond of the week. And since I wanted to talk a little bit about how I use the 5-minute chart for my entries and exits, I have about a minute. So I'm going to show you that. I'm going to move this into a smaller chart over here. And then I have another browser window open with the 5-minute candlestick chart. And this is how I time my entries and exits. I go to this chart when I know going in, I'm ready to buy this stock. I'm ready to sell this stock. I don't use this. I don't follow this all the time. I only am looking at it for my entries and my exits. Right now, the entry point was back here where the PMO went into a buy signal and the RSI got positive. So that would have given you an entry back around here. Now, of course, as it kept going up, there really wasn't any more entries today. At this point, you know, we've got a PMO sell signal. Certainly the RSI is positive, which is nice, but you're going to want to see that move back to the upside for your entry. And that's all we have. I am going to close it down. From Carl and I, we would like to say goodbye, happy trading, and especially a happy Thanksgiving holiday for all of you. Happy trading.
Hey, Grayson Rhodes here with StockCharts. Thank you so much for watching. I hope you enjoyed that video. If you did, consider giving it a like down below, maybe leave us a comment, and if you're new to the channel, you can subscribe at the link up above. We're gonna bring you daily content from an incredible collection of technical analysts and financial experts.